Hi, and welcome to StellarMedia.co. We're really, really pleased today to welcome a very special guest for our live podcast. We'd like to welcome Georgia Jenkins. Georgia is from Oracle, Georgia, and she's very kindly agreed to be our first podcast guest. Welcome, Georgia.
Hi there.
And also like to introduce Mike of StellarMedia.co.
Hi, everybody. It's an absolute pleasure to join you on this first podcast. I'm really excited. I can't wait to. I've been listening to Georgia for the last 10 minutes, and she just has the most amazing voice. So we're in for a great time, I'm sure.
Okay, so Georgia, we're going to kick off with a very kind of clear question for our listeners. Tell us, how did Oracle Georgia come into being?
That's a very good question, and Mike, thanks for my amazing voice. It's a mixture of all sorts, really. It's years of travelling, which leads me to how I came to be classed as an oracle, really. I have been working with spirit work and energy work and children mainly for many years now, and along the way I've had some interesting journeys that have led me to helping out people on a deeper level. And I didn't want to just be one of those that you could just go to for a reading or for some healing and that would be it. I really wanted to make a difference. So even though I'm not saying other people don't make a difference, I just wanted to make a deeper difference on a different level, and help change people's lives. So I really did a lot of research, internal work, a lot of journey work on myself to discover what was going on within me, because I feel if I know what's going on within me, then I'm able to help others as well and be clearer. So that's what started my journey as an oracle.
Okay.
So when you consider the journey of becoming the Oracle, Georgia, what was it that was happening in your life at that time that took you onto that spiritual journey?
I had a client in Australia when I was living back in Australia, where I'm originally from, and the client wanted to experience a journey of her own development. She kept visualizing things in her dreams that she felt a part of an area which was in Egypt, and she wanted to go and discover that aspect of herself. So, and she wanted someone to watch over her on a spiritual sense, and actually guide her through the process. So we went to Egypt together. When we arrived in Egypt, there was something there that rocked my energy within me. And that's what started the process. So I didn't wake up one morning and think, I'll just decide to call myself an oracle. It was a process that went through visions, through dreams, through connecting with an actual oracle's tomb in Egypt that took me into almost, the best way to explain it is like a live dream, where I was shown myself in a past life and then reminded, this is who I am, and this is how you need to step into this journey, and discovering yourself as the oracle that you were and as the oracle that you are.
Well, I mean, a lot of people that may have had, I'm going to say the word spiritual awakening in a sense. I don't know if that would fit, but it can be quite scary. So how did you cope with, that experience happening, and then you beginning to work through and then start offering your services to other people?
Good question, Lana, because I find that quite a lot of people want to be awakened or enlightened, and that's a different journey for, everybody they come across. So everyone experiences it in a different fashion. I myself have experienced these awakenings, for a better way of speaking, along my journey quite a lot of times, because I've evolved, if that's the right word to say, evolved from one energy level to another. So my journey has, started as a healer, went into reader, went into a medicine woman, and then evolved into the oracle as I am today. So there wasn't any fright because I've had these experiences along the way. What was frightening for me was I was shown the responsibility of an oracle. And I don't take that word lightly at all, because I was shown that, and it was a question. This is a mission. This isn't just a journey. Are you interested in taking on the mission? And with my Greek background as well, oracles have been used for centuries. So I was shown both. My family's Egyptian background and my Greek Egyptian background. So I was able to evolve from that. It was amazing, actually, really scary at the time in Egypt because so much was going wrong in the physical world. But there was something inside me that just knew it's okay, this is who you are. And it's that inner knowing, that inner being, if you're connected to your inner being, that just says this is just part of the process.
Yeah. Wow. I mean,
so when you think of, when you think of the people that come to see you, Georgia, can you define the type of people that come to see you? Is it that simple? Who is it that you most help?
Good question again, because it's not specifically types of people that I work with. Anybody and anyone that is, or anything, because it's not just people that I work with, if that makes sense, and animals and trees and all sorts of energies that I work with. So I'm open to anybody that is wanting to know and understand who they are and their process. So a lot of the times I find people as well, So there'll be an opportunity where I'll be sitting next to somebody and I just strike the conversation up because I get the urge or an image that needs to be passed on. Obviously, it depends who I'm speaking with. I just don't drop it in.
So this is not something that you might be doing on the bus on the way somewhere.
Yeah, no. Although I had that opportunity in a plane once, but I had to restrain myself, get myself back into my book that I was reading at the time. So, yeah, I have been known in the past to just run up to somebody and say something, I must say. And they were very grateful because I met with them a few years down the track and they said they're very grateful for the information I passed on at the time, but it's not a regular occurrence.
Okay, so for those listeners just joining us, you're joining the podcast with StellaMedia.co, and we have our very special guest, Georgia Jenkins. Georgia, you can find on Facebook through her Facebook page, Oracle Georgia, and she is sponsoring today's podcast. Her website is www.georgiajenkins.co.uk. So, Georgia, you talked about energies earlier on, and different energies that you're working with very different types, people, animals, and the environment. Can you just explain to us a little bit about those differences that you experience when you're perhaps working with land and nature and when you're working with people?
Yes, of course. I spend a lot of time out in nature myself because that's where I recharge my batteries. That's where I got a lot of my wisdom and knowing, and there's so much going on around in the planet at the moment. We all have our opinions about what's going on there. I feel it a lot more myself because I am interested in knowing why is that bird flying over, or there's a reason. For me, energy, there's a reason why things happen. It's not a coincidence. I don't believe in coincidences. So an example of my work would be if I need things aren't working, a farmer's not receiving, the crops aren't growing, there are always pesticides. I went to a retreat not so long ago, a resort where there were lots of bugs. Everybody was getting bitten by the fish in the sea, by the mosquitoes, and I had to sit still within my being and sit with the land and ask why was this happening, because it only just all of a sudden started happening. So I have that way of just sitting and watching and seeing the energy flow, feeling the vibrations, and using and opening myself up for a channel for spirit to work through to balance that energy out. And that's one of one of the roles that I do. When it comes to people, I have clients that come to me that things aren't working. It could be they feel they have a curse or a hoax, which was one recently, or, you know, they've got so much badness happening in their lives and they just don't understand why. You know, they're good people, but they can't understand why. So I do a journey on their soul's journey to see what, you know, this is where the oracle comes in. I'm able to look at the past, present and future and see where there's an imbalance. And help clear that imbalance, whether it be through words, through mindset, or through a physical cleansing, or clearing old contracts from the past that need to be cleared.
Okay. So if somebody was coming to you for a session with you, can you give us a kind of general, I know it can be very specific depending on the issues that people are coming to you with, but could you give us a sort of general idea of what somebody could expect if they were coming to you for a session with you?
You can expect the truth. And the truth sometimes isn't accepted in the way it needs to be accepted. You know, when people come to me, they're ready. And even if they're not ready, my first question is, are you ready? Because I don't like doing things half-hearted. I never have been, as you know, Lana, yourself. I don't do things half-hearted. If you come to me to move forward in your life and you want to make a difference, then, you know, I need to make you aware of what that means. Because it's that old saying, be careful what you wish for, you know. So my first initial introduction to my work would be, hi, how are you? Glad to meet you. Are you ready? You know, and I'm very blunt with it because, you know, I don't believe in wasting time. You know, that everybody has their job to do. I'm just not a light and fluffy person, but I give lots of love. There's a lot of love and loyalty and unconditional love. But I don't do it light and fluffy, if that makes sense. I'm very straight to the point. So, but most clients that come to me want to make a difference. They want to move on. They want to elevate their work. They want direction. They want to clear their job. They want to clear their life of all the clutter, and they want to be on track with their divine life. So I do my best.
I mean, I'm just sitting here now, Georgia, and I come from a slightly different spiritual background than most. Are there any people of inspiration that you follow online, any authors that you particularly like to read? Where do you get your inspiration from?
My inspiration comes from the everyday people that I come across. My lessons come from my children, and I draw on nature and my guides and my life experiences to help me with my work. So although I understand and know that there's many out there that, you know, are well known and you know, people can draw on them, for me, I've experienced things on a natural way. So that's where I draw my strength and my knowing from, if that makes sense. So I was taught from spirit at a very young age that if you want the truth, you go straight to source. And I've always kept that in my back of my mind. I just never had somebody to walk me through the process, you know, from a very young age. And I didn't want other people to have the same experience. So I would like to be that person that walks them through the process. So life has just met all aspects. At the very beginning, I used to listen to Doreen Virtue. I found her energy at the time when I was young, very inspirational. You know, when I was young, I wanted to be Doreen Virtue. You know, but then I had kids, and my kids have a brilliant way of bringing out the worst in me, and having to work and heal it. And fix and change and evolve and grow, and that's where I draw my inspiration from.
Oh, that's brilliant. So you're listening to StellaMedia.co podcast with our very special guest, Georgia Jenkins. If you would like to connect with Georgia, you can find her on her Facebook page through Oracle Georgia. And she is sponsoring today's podcast. You can go over to her website on www.georgiajenkins.co.uk. Georgia, you talk about the children, and I know, obviously we've known each other quite a while, and I know part of the journey that you've had, and you've spent an awful lot of time working with children. Can you just give us a little bit of insight into, how that came into being? You created some events to support children. I know you've got future events coming up, but just give us a little bit of insight into why in particular you're very interested in working with children and their spiritual development.
I love working with children, and the reason for that is they're at a place where a lot of them know, but they don't have the support, not in a support as in they don't have a mum or dad or grandparent or community, but I find most of these children have been misled with what's going on. And as I mentioned, with my kids, I had my own challenges as a child myself. And then when I started, my process with being a mum, I had other challenges, and I thought there's something better than this. Surely, surely there's a natural way of dealing with this. Why is that? It's that question of why is that happening? And I sat with it for quite some time. And it was my eldest daughter, who's now, almost 19, and she was. It was the whole vaccine, and without upsetting anybody here, there was a whole vaccination and immunization, and she felt really ill from it. Why is she falling ill? What's in that? And my son Mitchell, he didn't speak when he was younger, but Bronte would speak for him. And I just thought, why are we waiting to work with adults? Why are we waiting until they're adults and then they have these, issues and problems? Why aren't we working with children, teaching them techniques, knowledge and wisdom from young age that we used to do in communities? And why have we stopped that? Why aren't we giving them the power back? Why are we taking the power away from them? That's why, I felt my children were, as myself, we just weren't powerful enough in our own knowing. So that's why I wanted to start working with children. And these have a voice and no one's listening. They're hearing them, but no one's actually listening to them. So that led me to the events, because I would take my kids to the Mind, Body and Spirit shows, and I couldn't get the pram through. They were only little. But I didn't have I moved from Australia. I was in the UK, and I wanted my support system there as a spiritual, and where else to go but to find people like-minded was there. And I didn't feel they catered for them to the level where they are now. Things have changed and evolved, obviously, now.
Yeah.
But that was hard work. You can't, they're too young to do healing on them. They're too young to do a reading for them. Since when did we have an age for that, And, yeah, hopefully that answers your question. Yeah. That's why.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, Georgia, without giving any names away, or perhaps even the situation away, is there a story that you can tell your listeners as to how somebody met you and then you work with them and that you've seen just an incredible change in them as a young person? Is there a story that you can tell just to encourage your listeners?
Wow, yeah, I'm trying to sort of pinpoint one, because over the years I've worked with many children who have grown and evolved in a way that have come into their own. Lana, Gregor, wow, Connor, young Connor, amazing artist. I remember one day Connor came to me, and it was with the events, and I hope they don't mind me speaking of him, but he was such a vibrant soul. His light was shining, and Gregor's lights, the boys' lights were shining from a mile away, and I was like, oh, wow, everybody, is everyone seeing this? And then, we did the Lotus of the Stars for children events, and it was about bringing in all the elders, to go, right, you're elders, you need to be passing your wisdom down to these beautiful, bright beings, look at them, they're evolving, they're changing. And kind of brought me this amazing photo, like painting he designed. But that took a lot for him. He just, firstly, he was an artist, but he closed down and didn't want to show everybody that he could create. We had our amazing Patrick Gamble, who was a, fantastic artist, as everybody knows. And for this little boy to come up to me and say, I've made you this Lotus from the Stars, painting for your events. What do you think? I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. To be able to have the confidence, our events were about not feeling that someone was more superior than the other, or someone had a better power or knowledge or anything like that. I feel I created those events to bring everybody together. And Lana, you may remember one of our first events that we held at Markham Country Park. I remember Alison at the time, who, we used to work with at the park, said to us, did you go in and order that, the weather? It was like, no, these kids have brought this weather because they wanted to go out and play. Yeah. And when Connor brought me that painting and I looked at all the other kids surrounding the teepee as well, I thought, my job's done, if that makes sense. We've anchored the energy there for these kids to shine. I can't pinpoint one child or another, to be honest with you, because each one had a special journey. Even seeing, Tracy's little girl who really wanted to be a pixie and give herself a pixie name, but didn't have the courage to do it. And it was always these kids running behind me saying, can you go and tell mum this, or can you tell dad this, and I really want to do this. And I guess I felt I became a spokesperson for these children. And we ended up doing a naming ceremony for her under the beautiful tree in front of Markham Country Park's castle. Don't know if you remember that, but I do, yeah. And just to see that beautiful flower bloom at that ceremony, again, a little girl that was really quiet, didn't speak, in a corner, hiding all the time, to be able to stand in front of a group of people, open up and tell everybody what new name she wanted to have, was another amazing. Oh, I'm getting tingles just thinking about it, to be honest. But there's a couple for you, yeah.
Yeah, and you're now, you're in Scotland now. You've had a stint. You moved back to Australia for a while, and you've moved back to Scotland now. So I know you've got some events coming up. Can you give us a little bit of information about those events, when they are, and what the nature of those events are about?
Yeah, of course. Moving back to Scotland, my husband's Scottish. I wondered to myself, why am I in Scotland?
It's a lot of rain there, I hear. More than Wales.
It's lovely. It's lovely. It's completely opposite to what I am. I'm a surfer. I'm a, as we call it in Australia, we're sun worshippers, and but here I was in Scotland, and the country up here is beautiful. There's a lot of ancestral knowledge here that I was reminded to awaken here, to bring people. There's such spirituality here. So I sat one day in Edinburgh, in Princess Street, and I thought, you know what? I heard this little voice inside me saying, it's time to bring an event here, like the ones you did in Markham, but with a different spin. I thought, okay, this is interesting. This is Edinburgh, right? There are events around, don't get me wrong. But Spirit said to me I had to, come on, bring it up, anchor the energy in Edinburgh. So the health and wellbeing shows have come about. The health and wellbeing shows, there's one in Livingston, in the Mercure Hotel in March, and there's another one just outside of the Edinburgh Festival that they have in August. So ours is in the end of July, and it's in the Merchants Hall. Now, the Merchants Hall I was drawn to, one, because the address is number 22.
Master number.
Master number. And I thought, oh, this is interesting. And when the address was Hanover, and I thought, that's another message there. And then a friend of mine said to me, you realise what the Merchants Hall was, right? And I was like, well, I'm drawn to it. Can you please explain? Well, the Merchants Hall in Edinburgh was the first place they used to do the exchange of energy there. So they did a lot of that's where they exchanged and they bartered, and these just different businesses came together, and that was where they first started, was in Edinburgh. And I thought, oh, that's interesting that we've been drawn there. So it's almost like I was shown I'm a bridge for change, a switch for change, and to bring a new vibration and to anchor the energy into Edinburgh. So that's where the well-being shows.
Okay, so do you just want to just repeat the dates of the events, the times, so that people, if they want to come along, and the types of different businesses that will be there?
Absolutely. So the one in the Mercure, which is in Livingston, is on the 11th of March. Mm-hmm. That one is between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. This one's going to have key speakers, with workshops that are aimed to help people understand and educate themselves about what you can do that's natural, that's a different way of mainstream thinking, not just going on a diet, but what else you can do to help shift your being into a more well-being. So a few of our events, a few people that are coming along, for example, would be, myself, to help with the mindset. We've also got Peter Haley, who deals with the energy of the singing bowls and how the vibration within the singing bowls can help change the vibration in your physical body. Mm-hmm. We've got Ed, who has a gym, who deals with the inside and outside, but a different way of doing energy work. So it's not just a normal gym where you just go and huff and puff and push, and I'm not a gym person myself, but he has a holistic way of doing things. Mm-hmm. We have Marie, who's a holistic person that comes to do with nutritional value, but on a spiritual level. Yeah. So they're just a couple just to mention. And I've got Moira, who's doing some beautiful angel work with angel boards as well. When we're going to the July show, which is the Health and Wellbeing show in July, is on the 29th and 30th of July. Mm-hmm. As I mentioned, that's at the Merchants Hall. It's over a weekend, though, because we thought, you know what, it's the weekend, let's do this, on a bigger scale so that we can introduce more stalls. So that's going to be from 10 till 4, Saturday and Sunday. And our beautiful Lana will be there with her beautiful colour bottles and colour therapy. We're going to have an aura camera as well, so they can see the before and the after for healing. Yeah. We're going to have masseurs. We're going to have, nutritional values about what you can do not only with the mind, but with the body, internally and externally.
Okay.
And there's a couple of big surprises in the July one as well, if we like to put a spin on it.
Fantastic. I mean, it just sounds incredibly vibrant for people to be able to access. We're coming to the end of our time in relation to our podcast. You are listening to StellaMedia.co with Lana Morris and Mike Griffin. And we have our very special guest, lovely Georgia Jenkins from Oracle, Georgia. Georgia is sponsoring today's podcast, and you can find out her website by going to www.georgiajenkins.co.uk. Final question, Georgia, and this is a bit of a strange one, which is there a question that we could have asked you in today's podcast that we haven't, but you would like to answer?
That's a good question, Lana.
Other than that, I have got a question if you want me to ask the question.
Yeah, ask me away, Mike.
Okay. I'm thinking about your work with children, Georgia, and I'm thinking that I'd like you, if you could, just to encourage parents? What is it that parents can do right now to enable their children to reach their own personal destiny? Is there 3 tips that you can give parents that would help their children on their spiritual journey?
Absolutely. First one, set a safe, loving, open-hearted environment where children can come to you no matter what their thought process is, no matter what's going on in their life, that they would feel open enough to be able to come to you unconditionally with no judgment and speak about what's going on in their mind, in their body, because they're very aware. These children are very aware now. So one, please be open to listening, not just hearing. If you're going to have a conversation, make sure you're present. Make sure your phone's switched off. Make sure you're not going to be interrupted. Make time for the kids to be able to go through. Sometimes they might start off and they're just rattling away, but once they're okay, once they've gone through what I call the rattle, the truth starts coming out of what's really going on deep. 2, look for signs. Children don't just turn up one day and just think, I'm just going to commit suicide today because life is really bad. There's been things along the way that have evolved in the child's mindset to bring them to that state. They say it's a form of weakness to commit suicide. It's not. It's a form of strength from a child's negativity, too much power given to the shadow side of them. So, yeah, be present. 3, give lots of love. Their energy evolves. They have their lessons. I don't believe there's anything we can teach children per se. It's more about opening them up to hearing, because they already know what they need. If they're all clogged up and you can see that and they don't know what's going on, give them a bit of paper, pen, crayons, paint, whatever. It doesn't matter their age. Get them whatever they're experiencing to get it out. I call it the wiggle. And, it's the wiggle. I get people to, if you don't know what's going on, give yourself the wiggle. It's like wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. You just make yourself dance. Get it out of what's going on in here, because love is a great healing power, but laughter is even bigger, And so if you can find the laughter in life with your child, then that is the guidance and help they need on their spiritual journey.
Yeah, fantastic.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so here we are at the end of the podcast. I'd like to thank Georgia Jenkins. You can get hold of Georgia if you'd like to access her healing and her services by going over to her Facebook page, Oracle Georgia, or you can go to her website, www.georgiajenkins.co.uk. Georgia, thank you so much for coming on,
Georgia.
Being our guest. We've absolutely thoroughly enjoyed the experience. Any final thoughts before we sign off this morning?
Absolutely. You asked me if I had a question, within me. There's a child within us all. Okay. Mm-hmm. So when I say that I speak with children, there's no age to that. It's the child's within us all. And I think sometimes as an adult, we forget to find that inner child that has that joy and laughter. Yeah. And as it's like that full circle, we start off and we go through age, and then we get to older age and we start acting like a child again. So if I can leave a thought with you, open up your heart to find that inner child of you that finds the joy in life. If you don't know how to get there, then get in touch with me, because I'll take you there. There's always a hand that's open to helping. It's just knowing where to find that helping hand, if that makes sense. So I really love it. Love you both. Your journey that you've done so far, Lana, has been amazing to see how much you've grown, and you're a lucky man, Mike. But to see your spiritual journey, just to see you as a person, how much you've gone through and how much you've evolved. I'm so proud to have been part of that journey and to see how far you've gone. And I really appreciate you, presenting this opportunity for me to reach out to different people. So thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you so much. You have been listening to StellaMedia.co. You have also been listening to our very special guest, Georgia Jenkins from Oracle, Georgia. Georgia has very kindly sponsored today's podcast episode. You can access Georgia by going to her Facebook page at Oracle Georgia or visiting her website, www.georgiajenkins.co.uk. Any final words, Mike, before we finally sign off for today?
I would just say thank you, Georgia. It's been an absolute pleasure. I could listen to your voice for 3 hours. So hopefully we can get you onto another podcast later in the season. But for me personally, I just want to say thank you for being such a brilliant guest. You've communicated so clearly. And my mind is swimming right now with possibilities. And so that's all down to you. Thank you ever so much for your time today.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for sharing your time and energy.